Namaste everyone. Today we'll explore this chapter on the nature of freedom or liberation. Let's offer our prayers for better understanding. The nature of freedom or liberation. Attaining freedom from miseries is liberation. Liberation is both permanent and temporary. So these two first statements in themselves are extremely confusing to start with. To a beginner in the field of spirituality, they will not be able to make a head or tail out of these things. Attaining freedom from miseries is liberation. So let's explore this one first. Freedom from miseries. That even a worm, even an insect, looks forward to escaping oneself from miseries. They'll do anything or everything for food and survival. Anything that comes in their way of having a complete meal or whatever threatens them is misery to them. What about human being? Food and survival. Both are there. There is hardly any human being without these two items. We are not talking of exceptions, by and large. And yet, there is misery perhaps, and because of this misery, one feels bound. There is a bondage created because of this misery. But so is the bond created because of excessive desire for certain fulfillment. Earlier, I had received a request why this aspect of desire and wish is so much complicated in spiritual literature, including our Sahaj Marg prayer, where it says, "We are yet but slaves of wishes, putting bar to our advancement." But we all feel that some level of desire will always remain. See, if you have done a research on particular gadget, for example, listening to music for it, or telephone research, or ask the earlier inventors of all these gadgets, were they happy with their initial research? Perhaps in the beginning. Later on, you get fed up and say, okay, I'd like to have something better. And then the idea comes, let us evolve this further. Can this idea of evolving such gadgets one after the other a block to my advancement? So we have to ponder over this idea of wish versus desires in a very analytical way. Just as karma and Shrama is misunderstood. Likewise, wish and desires are also misunderstood aspects, which we will take up some other day and discuss this in detail. But suffice to say, anything that keeps me away from myself, from my comfort zone, it distorts my discriminating ability, discriminating faculty. Just as headband, when I'm head bent on certain belief, and even if you are a medium and directly communicating with the source, and source says, no, you are wrong, but your ego says, no, this is right, then you will really get confused. Oh, the voice that I'm hearing from inside, is it right or wrong? And thus we suffer because of this confusion. Earlier we understood very well that when the seer, the entity that sees from inside, and what is being seen, what is being observed, drashta versus drashya. Once they become one, to the extent that the seeker identifies oneself with that one, then there is yoga. So the first and foremost thing that we have to understand, that it is this oneness of seeing by the seer and what is being seen. This identification creates yoga. Confusion is when they are at crossroads. Babaji talks about going beyond dvandvas, going beyond opposites. We naturally arrive at a state of liberation. That means one is not even aware of miseries nor its opposites. Moment you free yourself from misery, and automatically when you start feeling happy, for example, and you start again being devoured by the states of happinesses, then too somehow you lose a perspective. Obsession with anything makes us lose perspective. The way we want to escape from misery and the way we want to remain enamored by the happinesses to a greater and greater extent, that too distorts our vision. And anything that makes us distort our vision, where the seer starts seeing things and needs proper glasses to see. Likewise, when the seer and sin remains in a confused state, there will always be a problem. Unless and until this confusion is removed, till then we will not be able to get liberation. The second statement also, when we read further, will come to understand that there are many problems associated with this claim. Liberation is both permanent and temporary. Here Lalaji Maharaj is talking about liberation as well as salvation in one go. Salvation, according to Babaji Maharaj, is also temporary. Liberation is permanent. Here, liberation has nothing to do here. In the traditional way of understanding that liberation is all about not being born again. No, you are so liberated, you are so free that you can choose to come back. Otherwise, why would the great souls like Lord Buddha or Swami Vivekananda say, I'll be back? Only a truly liberated person will say, I can do whatever I want. Of course, within that framework of Dharma. When the liberation is such that the bondage of sorrow is never felt, it is permanent liberation. Is bondage also permanent? If we are to speak of liberation as permanent, no. Bondages are not permanent, they are temporary. If bondages were permanent, there would not be any possibility of liberation from them. Now, the question is, if bondages are temporary and are not permanent, is liberation also temporary? Bondages are temporary, but liberation is permanent. While in the second sentence, Lalaji Maharaj says liberation is both permanent and temporary. In the last sentence of this paragraph, based on the bondages, Lalaji talks about liberation as both temporary and permanent. So, in simple way, we can understand from this that as long as bondages will remain, there is no hope for liberation. Moment you are out of this association of bondages, whatsoever they be, once you get out of these bondages permanently, then there is permanent phase of liberation we call proper liberation and not salvation. Well, these are all actual philosophical juggleries. Going beyond Dvandwas, we should understand that where the idea of misery or happiness both are transcended, then we arrive at a pure state of liberation. You will yourself know, you'll yourself experience it. Yes, I don't need any other proof from Shastras or anyone else, including my master. Such a state is achievable through our simple practices. Morning meditation, evening cleaning, keep on doing it. One day you will realize that yes, suddenly, just as churning of butter happens, like that, this state also on its own will speak to us that yes, this is liberation. Some say that being bereft of feelings and movement like a stone is liberation. Some think that being one with the ocean as the drop is liberation. Others say that flame uniting with flame is liberation. Some believe that one who ascends high is liberated. But none of these is true. Mental attachment is bondage and detachment is liberation. It is also called sacrifice or renunciation. Renunciation and detachment can also be called liberation. The following is the difference between these two, which is also found in a saint and in one who has renounced everything. Whenever we look at such statements, we really get confused. Can renunciation be an act? Can detachment be an act? Can a drop falling in the ocean be an act? Can a state of liberated mind pretend like a stone? No. State of liberation, when it really happens, you need not pretend. You need not even make an effort that the drop is merging now in the ocean. That effort also becomes redundant. Feeling that I am pure, feeling that I am detached from the rest of the world, this will no longer be artificial or cultivated. It simply happens. Renunciation is not an act. Renunciation is a result, overall result of what we have become as a result of our practice. It cannot be enforced from outside and pretend to be like a stone, feelingless or actionless. As long as we have this human frame, we will have to act. Karma is a must. Dropping all sort of karmas and say, I am liberated. No. You are still trapped in actionless saga. In fact, actionlessness will be felt even while you are acting when a true state of liberation comes. We will explore this further in the next Sunday session. Thank you.